First story. OP ran away from her abusive parents after the entitled mom blamed her for the golden child sister's death, just because it was her birthday, while the deadbeat father did nothing as he hated OP for being a girl. Now, after 16 years, the mom has come back, begging OP to reconcile with her family, revealing that she is the product of her affair, hence the hatred. OP is confused about whether to expose this to the father or not. Throwaway account Jick, long-time lurker, and first-time poster. I never knew I would end up with a story worthy of posting, but here we are. Mostly looking for some advice here as I am at a loss. A little bit, but more like a lot of background for you. I live in the US now and have for most of my life. But my family has deep roots in a culture that puts special emphasis on family ties, faithfulness, male children, and a successful career. I am sure some of you can read into that and realize that I break pretty much all of these. I have been estranged from my parents for most of my life. As a 17-year-old, I ran away from home and have been low contact ever since. Growing up was something of a nightmare. My father was pretty much hands-off, having been disappointed his eldest was a girl. He was actually willing to see how I turned out, since he was willing to bend gender norms in our culture for my mother and let her be in charge of raising me, since she has a very strong personality and likes to be in charge, something that will make many appearances in this story. To him, perhaps I would take after my mother. Spoiler alert. I don't really take after her in any way that he thought I would. My mother, perhaps making up for the lack of my father being in my life, never gave me a moment of privacy or an inch of slack. Everything about my life was shared and subsequently judged. Nothing was good enough for my mother, and she never let anything go. I was too thin, looking like I'm gaining weight. My grades were too low, and then when they were higher, I wasn't participating in a sport and being lazy. And when I added sports and other extracurriculars and my grades dropped, I was right back to where I started. Too pale, too tan, too ugly, too much makeup, you get the idea. Nothing was good enough for her. And, of course, my father was no help, because he wanted a boy, and he got me. And therefore my mother must be right, and I must be a complete failure, right? Then, when I was in elementary school, my mother had another child. Surprise, another daughter. Just what they wanted. Not. That being said, my father treated us completely the same. My preteen self was treated no better or worse than my child sister. And that continued as we aged. The same can't be said for my mother. As I'm sure is not unusual for you readers to see, my sister was the golden child of us too. My mother kissed the ground she walked on. Well, not really, but you get the idea. To skip a bunch of emotional asides, I will cut to the chase for the breaking point that signified my running away from home. My sister died. We were close-ish, at least enough to be prepared to stay in contact with her, even if I decided to go low contact with my parents. So this hit me really hard. It wasn't anyone's fault, and I don't want to go too far into it, but it was a freak accident that happened on my 17th birthday. That being said, my father retreated even further away, and my mother did blame me, despite me not having anything to do with the accident other than being born on the day it happened. Things got much worse after that. Nothing physical, but every time I talked to my mother after that day, we were screaming. My father didn't say a word to me. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore, and I ran to stay with a childhood friend of mine that was close enough to be my brother and continued going to school. My mother probably knew where I went but made no effort to get in contact with me, not even calling or anything. And if she didn't know where I was, it's not like she filed a missing persons report or anything. We didn't talk for almost 5 years after that. That was the no contact part of this. At that 5-year mark, my girlfriend at the time finally persuaded me to reach out. And so began the low contact part. Now, that's most of the background. The background covers 2 of the 4 cardinal family values: family ties and male children. 2 failures, right? Well, now we get into the other 2. Faithfulness and a successful career. Since we started low contact again, my parents have discovered what I do for a living, which, honestly, isn't much. At least in their eyes. Now, what does that mean, you might be asking? Well, I do odd jobs. I travel all over and take on clients who need a person with a varied skill set, mostly in business management. Sometimes this is helping to start a business, turn a business into a franchise. Other times I have helped move a company overseas and set up base in a new country, a lot of that kind of stuff. It's not really a job title with a neat little description, and the pay varies wildly depending on what's in my scope and how many random skills they need me to learn. I'm a bit of a jack of all trades. Of course, my ex-lawyer mother and surgeon father aren't fans of this. To me, I have had a very successful career. I'm happy with what I do, travel a ton, have learned a bunch of languages, have friends all over the globe, and I make a lot of money. A lot of money. With all the businesses I've worked with, I have plenty of friends who taught me about investments, and I have also made my money make me more money. I live very comfortably and work in bursts, which leaves me with a lot of free time. Now, my parents, who don't really understand what I do despite how many times I've tried to tell them, don't see it the same way that I do, and have made it very clear to me that their disappointment is strong. Quite very strong. Every time we talk, they start suggesting law or medical schools and assuring me they could get me a much better job for someone from this family. Whatever that means. This recently ended up in a very special edition screaming match, with my father actually joining in the screaming as a special guest. I took off from that family dinner to one of my friends, and we got very wine drunk, and she asked me why my mother hates me so much. So we decided to come up with the most ridiculous reasons why as we got progressively drunker. This led my friend to jokingly say that maybe my mother hates me so much because she's not really my mother. Well, I knew that the exact scenario wouldn't be possible because there are pictures of me in the hospital room right after labor. But there's another, very close possibility that stuck in my head for weeks after that. Eventually, it ate away at me enough that I did one of those ancestry DNA tests and realized why exactly my mother hates me so much. Faithfulness. According to my DNA or whatever, I have plenty of relatives on my mother's side, and not a single one on my father's side. So, she cheated on him, and I was a beautiful reminder of her own failure. Yay me. I knew even then that she cheated because my parents tried for children for years before they had me, and even had 2 miscarriages before having me, as was often hurled in my face during arguments. When I finally calmed down after this revelation, I took my mother out for lunch and showed her my evidence and told her my findings, after which my mother broke down right in front of me. Now, remember when I said that my mother took the role as head of the family in place of my father, who, as the man of the house, would have traditionally taken on the head of the family role, and this only happened because of my mother's strong personality. Yeah, up until that point, I don't think I had ever seen my mother cry before in my life. And that's when I got a hell of a story. My mother actually apologized, though I don't think it was really directed toward me and more about the situation in general, and told me the man who is my bio dad BD was a one-night stand, and she didn't even know his name. She had been in a really low place when she just happened to meet him, having just fought with her husband over their second miscarriage several months prior. My BD was charming, smooth, and as my mother put it, magical. She said it was the first time in many months that anyone had made her feel desirable and beautiful, and not like a failure, which isn't surprising considering the pressure to have children young in my extended family culture. This resulted in her sleeping with a stranger, something she just did to scratch an itch before returning to her life. When she found out she was pregnant with me, the thought that I wasn't my father's daughter didn't even cross her mind. In fact, she didn't have an inkling until I was old enough to really develop what she described as my BD's exact smile. This instilled a lot of fear in her that I was a product of her infidelity and was the start of her hatred toward me. After my sister was born, she again thought that perhaps things were fine because obviously she was capable of having children with her husband. Unfortunately for all of us, my sister passed, and I started to resemble her one-night stand more and more the older I got, and my mother had nothing left but disgust for me. Of course, that was before I figured it out. It's been about a week since then, and I have decided I need help from people who are less biased than my personal friends because, at the end of my mother's story, she was crying and apologizing, and even admitted that the person she really hated all these years was herself. She begged me not to tell my father and asked if I could ever forgive her and come back into the family. And I told her I had no idea what to say to that because I'd been dealing with this for so long for it to just come to a point like this. I don't know what all I left out and have just sort of been rambling, so feel free to ask clarifying questions and whatnot. But I guess I just need to see what people think I should do. Should I keep it from my father? Should I try to get along with them, now that my mother seems to have let go of some of her resentment, now that the secret is out? I know my mother, and have seen so many of her sides that I can really tell when she's being sincere or lying to me. And she did seem entirely sincere about trying to make amends for all she's done to me so far. So, what should I do? TLDR, my mother was verbally abusive during my childhood, and it's been 16 years since I ran away from home. I've been low contact for 11 years. I recently discovered the root of her hatred toward me as a child was because she had a one-night stand and cheated on my dad, resulting in her pregnancy with me. Now that she's come clean, she wants another chance to have a relationship with me, as I am her only living daughter. Do I give her another chance? Second story. OP regrets opening their marriage, supporting her husband when he got his girlfriend pregnant, then getting pregnant herself with him. So she has aborted the baby, divorced her husband, and is starting a new life. Married for 9 years. Me and my husband have been doing the polyamory thing for 4 years now. This started when my husband confessed to having feelings for one of our mutual friends. He really sold me on the idea of a polytriad, and we started living together. My family disapproved and stopped visiting us. That hurt, but things were okay. I did struggle with some jealousy issues. Although I told my husband that I was open to dating someone new and bringing the new person into our fold, in reality, I wasn't ready at all. The guys I liked quickly distanced themselves romantically as soon as they heard that I was a married female in a non-monogamous relationship. It was hard. As for the guys who were okay with my situation and pursued me, I wasn't attracted to them. Things changed in 2017 when my husband's girlfriend became pregnant with my husband's first child. I love the kid, I really do. She calls me Mammon and loves me a lot. Right around the same time, my company promoted me. I went from working 4 hours a day to essentially living 4 months out of my state. I immersed myself in my work, and in 2019, my husband talked about having one of our own to complete the family. Fast forward to June 2020, and I find out I'm pregnant, and we are having a boy. We had a big gender reveal and everything. The kiddo knows that she's getting a baby brother. I'm currently 15 weeks along, and 2 nights ago, my company offered me a permanent position in the new city. Because of COVID, they had to lay off many people, and they now need more people in leadership roles. From a career standpoint, it would be foolish of me if I let this opportunity go. But if I do that, it would break my family apart. Right now, my husband and his girlfriend are working on the baby room, and I'm here sitting conflicted. I'm really tempted to take up the job offer and run away from the life that we've created. I'm also secretly contemplating an abortion. My friend thinks that I should take up the offer. He thinks I'm unhappy with my life and that a change would do me good. I would be working with him if I took up the offer. I have friends in that city, so I know that I wouldn't be alone. I'm really stressed out thinking about it. What do I do? Commentator U/30cat024 asks. This whole situation stems from the fact that you became poly under duress by nature of your cheating husband. You don't become poly because you have someone else lined up already. All these people telling you to just work it out fail to see that you were coerced into this situation. I'm baffled why you let it go on so long, especially since you didn't have a kid together. But I suppose it is your visceral desire for stability. I would get an abortion and go create a life you actually enjoy instead of this day-to-day, colorless life of acceptance you've tolerated for way too long. OP comments. This was blunt, and maybe the honest response that I needed. My husband and his girlfriend swear that they didn't start a romantic relationship until I was fully in the loop of things. But to be really honest, I don't know. Maybe they did start out by cheating. But that ship has sailed, and I accepted the situation. So looking back on that won't help my situation. But I do feel that I need a fresh start now. Away from the mundane life that I have. Update. 15 weeks pregnant. I'm getting an abortion next week and moving on from my poly family. I made a post a few days ago about being conflicted with a new job offer and an existing pregnancy. Just thought I'd share it here first. Last night, I accepted the job offer, and I'm getting an abortion next week. My friend is helping me every step of the way. I'll be filing for divorce in a week or 2. I've had great years with my poly family and my husband, and now it's time for me to make the jump and dive into the unknown. Thanks to all the people who sent me supportive PMs and helped me make my decision. And yes, I did talk to a therapist via Zoom. That session helped me clear my head in a way that I hadn't felt before. And no, I haven't talked to my husband. I will talk to him after I actually get the abortion procedure done. I'm really focused at this moment and don't want conflicting opinions to derail my journey. So I will talk to him after it's all done. Thank you. OP comment. I'm not poly. My husband became poly a couple of years into our marriage when he fell in love with a mutual friend. And I went along with it because I wanted to please my husband, and I was afraid of our marriage breaking up. He was and is my only partner, and I was terrified of losing him. Clearly, that was a mistake, and it built a lot of resentment inside me over the years, which I couldn't understand or justify to myself. Update. I finally aborted my 15-week pregnancy, and I'm ending my polyamorous marriage. I moved out this Wednesday. If you check my post history, you would know what I'm talking about. Just an update for the people who reached out to me. I did get an abortion last week, on Friday. I finally told him this week, on Wednesday. I'd never seen him so broken. It broke my heart to see him cry, but I had to do it. His girlfriend hugged me, and little kiddo hugged me and bid me goodbye. My husband refused to talk to me. I'm waiting for him to reach out. I'm giving him space right now. I'm at peace, and I don't regret my decision. With this, I'm bidding my poly lifestyle a final goodbye. Thanks to all the people here who supported me. Third story. I divorced my wife after the paternity test showed that neither of the 2 kids is mine. Now she is accusing me of abandoning her kids, and everyone says I should man up. Why? Not my kids, not my problem. About a month ago, I found out both of my children were the results of my soon-to-be ex-wife's affairs. I've had a feeling for a while now that both of them were not mine. 6 years ago, when my son was born, I was the happiest I had been in my entire life. I had married my best friend, we had a child together, and everything seemed amazing. That was until he started getting older. After a few years, I started to have doubts that he was actually mine. He did not look like my child. The more he started to grow, the more I realized just how different he looked compared to what I would expect a child of mine to look like. I am not petty or paranoid enough to let that alone drive me. It was my of a wife that really set my alarms off. Whenever she went out, she never went where she said she did. She would have huge holes in her schedule she could never explain to me. She would refuse to allow me to interact with anyone from her workplace, and a close friend of hers accused her of flirting with her at the time. It did not help that soon after our son was born, her lies started to catch up with her. Still though, I loved her like the fool I was. She told me up and down how much she loved me whenever one of her lies caught up with her. She had convinced me that, despite the fact she was a lying and manipulative woman, she wasn't a lying, manipulative W. Last year, she got pregnant again, and I still held out a small bit of hope that it was mine. But when her daughter was born, it was obvious she was mixed race. I refused to sign the birth certificate, and the paternity test I demanded afterwards proved my suspicions right all along. Neither of them are mine. The day I got those test results was the day I filed for divorce from that W and walked away from the family I had created. I knew that it would destroy her son's life to see me walk out. Despite my concerns, I was the best dad I could be to him. I loved him with all my heart and put in 110% into being the father he deserved. Now though, when I see him, I am filled with disgust. Disgust for my W of a wife. Disgust with myself for not trusting my instincts. And disgust that the last 6 years of my life have been for nothing. I have been told by multiple people now that I am a monster for leaving my son like this. My ex has tried on multiple occasions since I moved out to use him to guilt me into getting back with her. She will have him call me at random hours of the night crying and begging for his daddy to come back. The day I moved out, she paraded him into the room as I packed my things to show me how much damage I am doing. In every conversation that he is brought up in, both online and off, I am berated and shamed. That despite the fact I am not the boy's biological father, I am his dad. What I have sadly now realized is that, to most, my own feelings mean nothing. My parents are my only supporters through all this, with my own siblings calling me a despicable person for abandoning a child like that. My feelings of betrayal and sadness mean nothing because a child is involved. I know it is not his fault. I know that the man he called his father for his entire life just walked away. But why am I expected to man up? Why should I have to pretend everything is fine, and I do not feel contempt for this entire situation? Why should I put my own life and feelings aside? I never was the boy's father. I loved him like one and honestly still do. But I would come to hate and contempt him if I had to play that role. Hate myself for not standing up and taking my own life back into my own hands. He is not my child, and even though it is not his fault, he is not my problem anymore. Edit. Wow, this post certainly blew up. Guess airing my dirty laundry accomplished something. Anyway, I've seen a few common questions, so I'll just answer them here. 1. Her son knows the truth of why I left. I sat down and told him that I am not his father, and that his mother lied to me and cheated on me. I made it clear I am not mad at him, that it is not his fault this is happening, and no matter what, I will still think he's an amazing kid. 2. Some are saying that I never loved him, or was always looking for a way out. It's hard to convey emotions in a text post like this, and even harder to allow vitriolic hatred towards your W of a wife to decontextualize the last 6 years of your life. You can believe what you want, though. 3. I have a lawyer, and I'm not going to be paying child support or alimony. Last though, For those who say I should stay in her son's life and be his father. That's not realistically possible. I do not hate him, but I have been cheated on, lied to, and used by a vile, self-centered W who has now caught her children up in her lies and deceit. He is a casualty of her actions and blameless. However, it can never change the fact of the harsh reality we find ourselves in. I don't hate him. I feel so sad when I think about how he feels. But all I see when I look at him is 6 years of my life I was lied to. 6 years of my life I was used. And 6 long years of built-up doubts and frustrations with a woman who used me. There is no putting aside my hatred to try and be in his life. Because the life I lived with him was nothing more than a facade cultivated by his mother. This is the harsh reality I find myself dealing with. And I simply cannot, in good faith, put myself or him through it anymore. Edit 2. Since I am seeing many armchair lawyers in the comments saying this post is fake on grounds of what I said above, I will not reveal what state I live in, but I am currently going through a fun legal process called disestablishment of paternity. I won't shut up 90% of you who think Google makes you a lawyer, but at least I tried. Edit 3. This is going to be my last edit before I move on from this small little distraction I created for myself. First, I want to thank everyone for their kind words to me. In the comments, the DMs, and the chat. You have given me a bright day for the first time in a while. I wish I could reply to all of you, but I cannot thank you enough. Secondly, I have noticed many people criticizing the word I used very profusely to describe my soon-to-be ex. I want to just say that the place I am now is one of the darkest I have been in my life. I see nothing but white-hot rage for the woman who ruined my life. Is what I said inappropriate? Is the word I used to describe her dehumanizing and vile? Yes, I will admit that. But I won't apologize for it. What I wrote here today was the truth of the world as it is for me right now. It is the raw, unadulterated stream of consciousness of a flawed man. I do not intend to try and get people to hate women, or to push some misogynistic message about how women are terrible. That is not my goal here, and that is not the message of this post. I understand why people do not like the word I used here, and you know what, I accept that as a valid criticism of what I did here today. I came here today to simply find some outlet for the situation I find myself in. To rant, mourn, and deal with the complex and raw emotions that have torn me apart for the last month. A place where I can freely speak my mind. And you know what? I did that. Today was pretty alright, thanks to you guys. Again, to everyone who showed me love and support, thank you from the bottom of my flawed heart. To those who came here disagreeing with me, but showed me respect, thank you as well. After the shame and ridicule I face in my real life, the respect you showed me despite your disagreement was nice. So long, and thanks for all the fish. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.